But I'll take a look at my bug down here, so it'll be the last time you see it. Our guest speaker tonight is the new athletic director here at Nebraska. He's going through the legend of Tom Osborne. Before he decided to join Nebraska, spent time under Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin, and most recently at the University of Miami, or the U, as they call it down there. So we are very honored to have him here tonight, so let's welcome Mr. Shawn Eichorst.
How are you all doing today? Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure, certainly a distinct honor to be here and be with you all today. More importantly, it's a humbling honor to be a representative of the University of Nebraska and such an iconic, not only institution, but athletics program. And I know there was a list of things that I could visit with you about. I found that in settings like this, because I've been in your chair not so long ago, that the Q&A thing was the thing that always was more discernible than what the person up front might have to say. I'm not a fairly humble person, humble background, so I don't like to do a lot of talking. I like to do a lot more listening. That's the core of how I've been mentored, and more importantly, the core and how I lead. But I can tell you a little bit, as you all probably know about the Husker program. We got 24 sport programs now. We added sand volleyball right before the first of the year. We have over 600 plus student athletes that come from all over the country and the world, for that matter. We have about 290 plus full-time employees, and of course, with part-time and event-based and student-based, we get upwards to 1,200 people working in the department at any given time. We're certainly a member of the Big Ten now, I think what makes, I'll just tell you a little bit about my perception early on about Nebraska. I had a really good job before I came here, and another very iconic program, and one that Nebraska has history with, meeting with Miami, Florida, and the Orange Bowl a few times. What attracted me to Nebraska was the uniqueness, at least that I've seen both in my due diligence, but now that I've been on the ground, about how we go about our business, and more importantly, about how we treat our student athletes. Nebraska has always been, I would say, a trailblazer, not so much a follower. And you could dial it back to academic support. Nebraska, I think at the end of the day, was on the forefront of that. Coach Osborne certainly was. And so not only were we a trailblazer in that field, but today we're probably the best in the way that we support our student athletes academically. I would say the same thing about our life skills program. At the end of the day, our main goal is to help our student athletes not only achieve and reach their maximum athletically, but more importantly academically, and prepare them for life, because this is such a short period of time for them. 99% of them, maybe 99.5% of them will professionalize in something else. So it's important for us to take those, the academic piece and the life skills piece very, very seriously. We're a leader in that regard. In fact, we get calls on a regular basis from other institutions around the country who want to come here and take a look at how we do things academically, how do we do things from a life skills perspective. Life skills is basically, and some of you, may know, is basically programming that we have in place to keep balance for them, to help them think about their years after athletics, community service, all those other sorts of things. The other thing that I think Nebraska's always been at the forefront on is strength and conditioning. You could say that about nutrition, and certainly now we've taken another step further with respect to the 40,000 square feet that we've designed in the East Stadium expansion. That's solely for research and collaboratively researched facilities with campus. So half of that facility is CB3, which is brain, biology, behavior, which is truly run by the campus side of the house. We certainly will have involvement because they'll be doing a lot of testing of our student athletes concussions and those sorts of things. And then there's another piece, another 20,000 square foot of that facility that's purely athletic research, and that's the Nebraska Athletic Performance Laboratory. And in there, we're going to be testing the limits on how we can help our student athletes have an edge with getting bigger, stronger, faster, and healthier, and all those other sorts of things. So that's a unique collaboration that you won't find at any institution in the country, and that says something about Nebraska as well. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of what I would consider the day-to-day situation here in the athletics department. Real quickly on the academic side, which I think is important and we're very proud of. Nebraska just had its 302nd academic All-American, and the next school to us is Notre Dame, and they're 80-some behind, right? The more significant award that most folks aren't aware of is we have 18 NCAA Top 8 award winners, and essentially that's the highest honor that a student athlete can get academically in their sport. Heisman Trophy, if you will, academics. The next school to us is Stanford, and they have 16. And then there's a couple of others with 10. So when you think about where Nebraska, not only institutionally, but more importantly, where its student athletes rank academically, that's a pretty good grouping. It's a good company. And it's growing. We'll probably have a couple more academic All-Americans before this spring season's over with. So I'm real proud about that. Leadership, real quick before I do Q&A. If anybody has looked into my situation before I've gotten here or since I've been on the ground, I've been mentored by I think some of the most exceptional not only administrators but coaches in the business. I worked with Coach Holtz at South Carolina. I worked with Coach Spurrier at South Carolina. I worked with Coach Tanner, who is now the athletics director at South Carolina, who was in 3 straight College World Series and won 2 of the last 3 years in Omaha. I had the good fortune to work with Coach Alvarez, who is a Nebraska. Was he here when you were here, Mark?
No, he was before me.
Before you. Coach Alvarez was obviously an illustrious linebacker here for Coach Devaney. And much of what he's done at Wisconsin is the blueprint here that Coach Devaney had at Nebraska. Over the course of Barry's 18 to 20 years at Wisconsin, they were horrible in football and a lot of other sports, and now they're at the top of their game, one of the best in the Big Ten. So having had a front row seat to work with him and a lot of other good coaches. And then, of course, I had an opportunity to work with, I think, one of the foremost leaders in the world, in Donna Shalala, who was 8-year Health and Human Services Secretary under Clinton at Miami. She was my boss, and really enjoyed working with her. So what I took from all of that in my upbringing, my small farming upbringing in Wisconsin, is leading with values, being positive in the approach in everything I do. And it's tough in this negative environment, I think, that our society is today, especially with social media and the way that the media outlets work. Positive, great energy. I talk to our staff all the time about that and distancing themselves from what I call, if you've read The Energy Bus, energy vampires, right? Eliminate the negative, get away from it, stay positive. And then real simple for me, it's to have a real solid vision, and related to that vision is to have a very straightforward and solid plan that just doesn't get put up on the shelf, that is evolving, that plan is evolving, making sure that you have exceptional 18 players as a part of that plan and executing that plan, and being unrelenting there, not accepting anything but the best in a positive way. Giving people the resources and the understanding that you're going to let them do their job and you're not going to micromanage. And there's great confidence and trust that comes with that. And then when they go off and they do that, you hold them accountable. and you do it in a very firm, fair, and consistent manner. You do it in a positive manner, but again, you're unrelenting in making sure that they're staying on task, and that when you're holding them accountable, you're doing just that. And you do it in a very collaborative and transparent environment. Easily said, much more difficult to do. And I'll just leave you with some quick hitters that I talk to really everyone that I come in contact in the organization about are the things that you should be mindful of and that you can control that don't take exceptional talent. And they're kind of the A's and the P's. One is the A's. I talk about attitude. I talk about associations. I talk about actions, and I talk about accountability. Try to keep it simple so they can go back to those major principles every day when they're delivering their task or executing their goals, those sorts of things. Then on the P side, we talk about having purpose. If you don't have any purpose, then you're going to get lost really quickly, especially if you're trying to lead. You better have passion. Right? If you're going to have a purpose, you better bring passion with it, because if you're not willing to do that, that's not going to help you much either, because people are going to see that right away from a leadership perspective. We talk a lot about having pride. That's one thing that Nebraska has, and that's pride and passion, no doubt about it. And then preparation, right? You got to bring it every day. You got to be prepared. And we've all been in those situations when we know we haven't prepared ourselves, right? And so, being prepared. And the first thing I talk to folks when they come and they talk to me about concerns or issues you might have is what preparation have you applied to it, and what are your solutions? Don't come to me right out of the box and ask me what the solution should be. I want you to bring those to me, and that's that. In my opinion, that's what good mentoring leaders should do. Not telling people, not micromanaging, but helping them get to the end game. So hopefully that is what you might have been looking for. And I'll just open it up to questions, if that's okay.
A couple of our students created a book club. So what are your favorite books, and what would you recommend to us?
Well, there's a few. Certainly The Energy Bus, I think, is an exceptional book, and in fact one I purchased for every full-time employee when I started. I think Good to Great is one of the better books out there. I just wrote about that this week, and I have a bi-weekly column that goes out on the website connecting folks to campus. I just wrote about Jim Collins, and I tied it into men's and women's basketball. I just got done reading Steve Jobs' book. That's a big one, but it was good. Talk about a different leader there now. That guy was ahead of his time, but he had no social skills, no social grace, which I guess can work for some. What else? Strengths Finders is a good book. There's a couple series on Strength Finders. Playing your strengths. Don't worry about the things you can't do. Worry about the things you can do. Lead for God's Sakes is another good one out there. It's similar to The Energy Bus in the sense that it's fictional. It's a parable, but it talks about leadership. It talks about how to treat people, relationships, spiritual. That's a really good book. It's based on an illustrious high school basketball coach in Kentucky who is fallen on hard times, and the janitor kind of is the one that stirs the drink and brings everybody full center. But those are some that jump out at me.
How did you get into what you're doing? Did you start off as like a graduate assistant coach at a school, or I just kind of want to know the origins of how you came to where you are today?
Very non-traditional. I played Division III football at Wisconsin and Whitewater. Got a business, really good business in poli-sci, minor there, with the notion I was going to law school. I went to law school at Marquette. Wanted to be a trial, lawyer, and I also was interested in sports. Marquette has a really good sports law program. From there, my last year in the sports law program, I interned with Mike Slive in Chicago at the Great Midwest Conference, which is now Conference USA. Mike is the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. Him and Jim Delaney are probably the two most powerful commissioners in the business. So I got a little taste of it with Mike, but I also had a really good job offer to work in a firm in Milwaukee, and I did that. I practiced law for about 5 years, product liability, med mal, mostly on the insurance defense side. Then I got a call from, when I played football, as the provost, who was a poli-sci teacher, who I had a relationship with when I was a student athlete. He called me out of the blue. He had become the chancellor. It's one of those deals you never know who you're going to be sitting on the bus next to. Galen called me and just said, hey, we got a men's and a women's department. I got to bring them together. You're going to have to let some people go, build efficiencies. You know, it's going to take somebody that might have a legal background. I like to get somebody that's away from sports so they can call it like they see it. And so that phone call was to me at 31 years old, had no experience in college athletics. That's how I got started. And that was a lot of fun.
What's been the biggest thing that you've learned throughout your career? You said, obviously coming from kind of a different background, there's probably a lot of learning to be done there with getting into college athletics. But what would you say has kind of been the biggest either factor to your success or most important thing that you've learned along the way?
Listening, which you can't learn that skill fast enough. I certainly didn't have it early on. I can continue to get better with it every day. So listening, looking, learning from, gravitating to exceptional people who do things the right way and learning from them. Knowing that you don't have all the answers, you need to collaborate, you need to be transparent. Having a deep down belief that people are good, and kind of scrub the cynical piece and all that kind of. That doesn't mean you don't need to have your antennas up, but I think for the most part people are well-intentioned. There's well-intentions out there and those sorts of things. Hard work. You got to be willing to do everything, and when you're a leader, so folks don't question whether you would have done that, or I still drives people crazy, but even over at Memorial, we have some of the finest and cleanest facilities in the country, but it drives some of the people that have been around me the last month crazy. I'm constantly picking up paper, cans, bottles, whatever. It's just just the way I am, or the way I want people to behave. Somebody asked me the other day about our business model and marketing. How many marketing reps do you have? And I said, well, I got 290 marketing reps. They're like, what's that mean? Everybody in the department is a marketing representative. Everybody in the department sells tickets. Everybody in the department's a custodian. I think you just got to have that approach.
When it comes to working on either long-term responsibilities or big projects that take a while to develop, what can you do on a day-to-day basis to either work towards that or to stay focused on that when it seems so far off?
Well, and the times change quickly too. What you might think is a good plan that you're seeding out 5 years. In 18 months it might be an afterthought. I think it just goes back to surrounding yourself with really good people who share some of the same thoughts, some of the same visions, some of the same beliefs, and trusting them to help you navigate the waters. Because the situation that I'm in is such a visible and iconic program. I just can't possibly manage it all 24/7. But within that, having that vision and that strong plan that I talked about, and having the right people in place, hopefully you can continue to stroke to where you want to go strategically, throughout the course by staying close to those people. I meet with my direct reports every other week, and then all my direct reports and myself meet every week. And I don't know if that helps, but it's more of it's probably structure. And then goes back to what I said earlier, just about my nature, just being unrelenting and persistent in holding folks accountable so we can stay on task. That's what I think Good to Great is so much about. That, when he evaluates all these companies and boils it down to just a few, what made them better than everyone else. I think it's some of those things. And what I said here at Nebraska is exceptional. It's more than exceptional. What I hope to do is not to maintain it or become complacent with it, but to make it better.
You've worked with a lot of successful coaches and people. How did you, replacing Tom Osborne, a guy that could do no wrong, in the public's eyes, how's that motivate you in your decision making? Did you shy away that you're going to be replacing a guy that everyone's so to say drinking the Kool-Aid? Did you know you're going to have a big task?
The way I've handled it is the way I've handled all the situations I've been involved with other similarly iconic coaches. They're just human beings. Tom just happens to be one of the most exceptional human beings I've been around, and certainly I think others see it the same way. Just spending time, getting to know one another, not assuming. And so I've gotten that question a lot. Certainly, the big shoes to fill and all that other sort of stuff. And the way I look at it is yeah, you can, if you want to look at it that way, you're probably destined for failure. But the way I look at it is I do things a certain way, and a lot of the ways that I do things are similar to the way Coach does things, but there's a lot of ways that aren't. And what he and I have talked about, what I've talked about with other of my high-achieving mentors is you got to be yourself. And I think Coach has said that publicly too. He wouldn't be here unless he fits and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately he's got to do his thing, and I've done my thing. And, but I stayed close. Coach and I talk about it every day, or at least every other day, and he's been really good. This is his life's work.
Who's the best leader you've ever been around, and then what traits do they have that made them so successful?
The best leader in the traits?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I've mentioned, it'd be hard for me to pick one of those folks I just mentioned here in the last 15 minutes or so. The traits are easy. I've described those. Really good, solid human beings. That may not be perceived like that, but these folks, up there, sometimes it's a lonely world. There's huge perceptions of people because nobody ever gets behind the scenes with them, right? I mean, what do you hear about Spurrier, right? He's arrogant, all that sort of stuff. Steve Spurrier is one of the nicest guys I've ever been around. And not only that, I don't know if I've been around a coach who gets more out of his players and the fact that his players love being around him and playing for him. You never know that publicly, right? The way he treats his quarterbacks and throws his visor down and all that other sort of stuff. Coach Alvarez, same way. I mean, he's a born leader, and he gets in a room with people, and it takes about 15 minutes, and you think you can run through the wall. Whatever he's telling you, you're going to listen and you're going to deliver. He always talks about, are you in and are you on, right? It's great that you're in, but are you on? And but those are really unique qualities in people because you gotta be yourself. You gotta be selfless. You gotta be compassionate. You gotta be firm. How do you be firm and compassionate at the same time? Those sorts of things. Shalala, she's in a world on her own, but she's kind of like Jobs. She's kind of rough, right, Martin? She can be a little bit rough, but the reason why she needs to be a little bit rough is because sometimes folks don't take females the same way they take alpha males. So she's going to let you know who's boss. But she's pretty darn compassionate when she wants to be. She's an effective leader, you know, all those sorts of things. So hopefully that's helpful.
From what I read, this whole running back jack thing was hatched like the night before the spring game. So I'm curious as to how your office managed the media storm that came with that.
Good question. You know, Jack Hoffman is someone that this program's had over a 2-year history with. From my perspective, we don't do those things to get publicity, right? So we have an awareness program around uplifting athletes, which is our football program has uplifting athletes, which strokes towards awareness for brain cancer, really off of Jack. But you know, in Jack's case, I don't think there was a strategy. I'll be honest with you, I don't think there was a strategy around that. It was kind of a perfect storm with what happened at other institutions. You know, there's a lot of bad news coming out with some other institutions. And, you know, we were the only spring game, I think, last week. It was on national television. And, you know, folks just, it went viral quickly. So we, from my perspective, from what I saw in the office, is we just kind of let it go. It kind of managed itself. We did get some more requests from media. I think ESPN was back in town to update their story. You know, they did a story on Jack in the fall. I think BTN showed it in a recap show this week. So they've come back to do a little bit more stuff, but you know, you can't pay for that kind of. I mean, couldn't write a check big enough for that deal. I think the last time I heard it was the most seen video. I'm probably wrong. I'm hearing this from my PR people, but you pick it: Twitter, YouTube. It was on all the national morning shows, you know, that sort of stuff. So I don't think you can make that. You know, you couldn't manufacture that.
Sometimes you're lucky.
Sometimes you get lucky. A lot of times you don't. You know, a lot of times it's, you know, they're more interested in the things you don't do right.
I think I heard where that the other day there's something like 5 million hits on that.
Yeah, I think and it may have been based on platform, but I've seen the number over 52 million. And I don't know what, maybe that's a collection of, I'm not.
That show how powerful.
I think it was a
social
Nielsen
media.
metric that the communications office at UNL would use or something like that. So
But it does show how important or how visible social media gets around them in terms of distribution of information.
no doubt. And that probably raises the thing that keeps you awake at night the most, right? A place like this that has so much history and tradition and is iconic in many ways and is very visible. It's a connection point, it's a pride point, it's a passion point for the entire state, whether you win here or not. Think about how long it takes to build that, and then within seconds it could be destroyed. You know, you pick something. You know. And I don't talk about other institutions and what's happened negatively at them, but you all know the stories out there that's happened recently. That's what we talk about in the department. You know, think about what you do, because all the things that have happened over the course of time that have been positive, it only takes you to make one big mistake and we're thrown in a mix of folks we probably don't want to be thrown into.
Sorry for all the questions, but how do you think Notre Dame handled the Manti Te'o situation? Would you handle it the same way, or would you handle it differently?
You know, to be honest with you, I certainly know the periphery. I haven't dug down into that one to see really what transpired. So I really don't have an opinion one way or another on that. Other than I know what I've taken away from it is that this stuff's going on out there, this catfishing or the way in which, you know, folks try to dupe one another in social media. What I have done is taken attention to that and making sure our people in our department, life skills, academics, coaches, they're aware of that sort of thing, so we can, you know, maybe we can detect it or manage it better.
So we're a bunch of golfers. Do you play golf?
Not very well. Yeah, I do. I like the game. I come from a part of the country that has some nice golf courses up in Wisconsin. Anybody from Wisconsin?
We have a lot from Wisconsin. That's a good
Where are you
state
from?
for us.
Sheboygan.
Sheboygan?
I was born in Wausau.
Mr. Masters pick for the weekend.
What's the scoreboard today?
Run away with it.
Is he really?
Might be, yeah.
Is there a consensus in the group?
Everyone in here is, I mean, I've never met people more obsessed with Tiger.
Where's he at right now?
Right. Tiger was winning last time I think it was fast.
One or two.
Maybe two more.
With all the departments and people and all the projects that you have to manage on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure there's going to be a point in time where you'll get burned out and get tired. How do you stay motivated every day? Just some little things that you do to keep plugging along instead of getting bogged down or overwhelmed.
Jack Hoffman.
Jack Hoffman.
Really, I mean, when you think about all the blessings you have. Family, got a good wife, good 3 young boys. I think there's balance there, but this is a different deal. Every place I've been has been a little bit different. So I'm finding out this week's. I think I'm giving 7 speeches this week. I had 4 or 5 sport banquets this week. So as further I get into the culture and the demands of this job, you certainly have to make adjustments and keep the balance. But I think trying to stay current, try to be a listener, a good leader, a servant leader, read, continue to read that. I mean, that's how you get balance. You got to find a way to continue to do the things that help you get better. Just reading Steve Jobs' book. It took me a long time, and it's a big book, but I took so much from that book. I know that that's the last thing all of us want to do in our busy schedules is to crack a book. But so I don't know if that helps. I grew up with nothing. So.
What are your goals and expectations for the football team the next couple of years? Do you have a plan in place should those expectations not be met?
My goal and expectations are continuing to do what we've done. We played in 3 championship games. Most schools around the country would love to do that. I know the bar at Nebraska's been set extremely high. And there's high expectations. Nobody's got higher expectations than me or Bo. I'm confident we're going to get there. We'll worry about the rest later. We are going to be a really good football team come the fall. Schedule sets up nicely. With Wisconsin and Ohio State going off, Big Ten stopped punishing us from joining the league. And we're going to play 8 home games, 5 in a row at home right out of the box. So what I tell people is and this is what makes Nebraska unique. I know there's a lot of passion and all that sort of stuff, but let's make it positive. Because I tell you what, when you're in the hallways, it goes back to the motivation. I'm in the hallways every day with those 18 to 21-year-old kids, and they're trying to find every way to be successful. Academically, in their relationships, on the football field, in gymnastics. These kids aren't going out there trying to fail. And I think we just need to make sure that we embrace that and we help them be motivated. Because there's a lot of things you can't control in football, you know that. Injuries, schedule, all that sort of stuff. But Nebraska has everything we need to compete at the highest level, and that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Excellent.
With that, how do you, when you have a kid from Texas or Florida or California, how do you sell Nebraska? How do you get them to come to the Midwest and come to our programs? What's your main points of that?
Well, I think each one of our coaches handles a little bit differently, but what's there not to like about Nebraska? You're all here. Nobody has finer facilities. We're a resource. When our coaches need what they need to be successful, they have it. The academics are great. I think the move to the Big Ten has right, wrong, or indifferent, or however you want to judge it. I think the academic profile, just by joining that conference and those illustrious institutions, have is a big positive. I think those folks who had graduated from Nebraska 20 years ago, their stock, their degree went up when we jumped into the Big Ten. I think Nebraska's at a place where people care. You know, we're at 325 straight sellouts in football. We're at 180 in volleyball. This coming fall, we will have reached our highest capacity attendance-wise in football, volleyball, and basketball, because we're expanding the stadium. We're doubling the size of attendance in volleyball over at the Manning, and we're going over to Pinnacle Bank. We've already sold more season tickets than we ever have, dating back to when we kept records, and we haven't even played a game in that building yet. So you just got to stay to your strengths, and I think the key is getting people here. What I'm hearing from our coaches is if we can not only get the prospective student athlete on campus, but if we can get mom and dad on campus with them, it's like a 99% chance we can lock them down. It's just getting them here, which makes it, you know, it's a challenge.
I have a quick one. When's the men's golf team going to gather the courage to take us on?
Background? What don't I know about this?
They've never been responsive to our challenges of putting our best 5 guys against their best 5.
Is that right?
I'm just wondering.
You talked to Bill about that?
I think Scott probably has, hasn't he? So I know it's something.
Maybe he wants to take it easy on you guys. I'll relay the message. Thanks.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
that was fun.
That was excellent.